What's up you guys, Mike here. Welcome back to the channel. In this video we're going to be taking another look at the Sony a6300, specifically going over 5 things that I absolutely love about the camera. Now I've owned this camera for about 3 years, a little less than 3 years now. I've taken almost 8,000 photos with it. There are many things I enjoy about the camera, but this video in particular is going to be my top 5 things that I love about it in no particular order. The first thing I love about the Sony a6300, and the first thing on our list today, is the weight of this camera. It's not, I mean, being a mirrorless camera, it's not very heavy at all, which makes vlogging and just carrying the camera around in general very easy. You know, vlogging with the camera about eye level right here or so. If you go back at the earlier vlogs on the channel, they were all done using this camera. So I was vlogging with this camera and I was taking photos with it. Now I've upgraded the Sony a6500, which I vlog with now, but at the very beginning it was all on this camera, and it's so lightweight. I mean, it's very, my arm had to be here for quite a while before it actually got tired. I mean, you could put this in your backpack. It doesn't add much weight or anything like that. It's just pretty easy to carry around. The second thing I love about the Sony a6300 is that what you see on the LCD screen back here and in the viewfinder is pretty much what you get. Since this is a mirrorless camera, there's an electronic viewfinder, and moving around the aperture button, or moving around the aperture dial and the exposure dial and the ISO settings, manipulating all that within the camera, those changes will show up on the LCD screen back here, and you can look at them in real time. You can look at the changes that you're doing to the photo in terms of manipulating how the camera's receiving light. You can see what those are doing in the picture in real time, and it's like what you see either on the LCD screen or in the viewfinder is pretty much what you get. Now, the electronic viewfinder and seeing what you're doing to your photo real time on the LCD screen is not unique to this camera. It's unique to mirrorless cameras in general. So for example, the Canon M50 that I did a review on earlier, I'll link that video up there if you guys are interested in watching that. That had the same electronic viewfinder and live, real-time LCD screen that this camera does. However, when I purchased this camera, Sony was pretty much the only brand in the mirrorless game, which is the reason I purchased this camera in the first place. But now, since purchasing this camera, I have used some Canon and Nikon full-frame DSLR cameras that don't have the electronic viewfinder or like the real-time feed on the LCD screen. I think some of the higher ones do. I'm not sure if the Canon 1DX does. That may have the live or the real-time LCD screen. I'm not sure. I've never used that one. But the full-frame cameras that I have used for Sony or for Canon and Nikon that didn't have that made me very glad that I purchased a mirrorless camera from the beginning. And of course, like, having this capability inside the camera, it makes your life simpler. It's at least made my life simpler. Like, I don't have to worry about histograms and making sure things aren't overexposed or being too underexposed. And it's like I get a real-time visual feedback before I take the photo on the LCD screen or in the viewfinder, whichever I'm looking at, in terms of how properly exposed the photo is. And I don't have to like take the photo and then go back through and sift through my, go back through and look at it on the on the photos in the camera, and then if something's wrong, I have to retake the photo. Usually what happens is, using the feedback on the LCD screen or the viewfinder, I can get it right the first time and move on. All right, the third thing that I love about the Sony a6300 is that it's extremely portable, and this kind of this has to do a lot with how lightweight it is. Like I mentioned in the first thing I love about it, but I mean, this easily fits in. It fits in my backpack. It fits in my. I've got a really like small camera bag that I carry around with me all the time. You guys have probably seen it on previous videos if you've been following the channel for a while. It has enough room for this camera and 2 lenses, and that's it. And it's not very large at all. I mean, you could even, depending on what lens you have on the Sony a6300, you may even be able to fit it in your pocket. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure if I would recommend that, but who knows? It's possible. I mean, some of the lenses I've seen out there, some of the wider angle lenses, I mean, they're not very big. So yeah, just the form factor of the camera makes it extremely portable. It's not cumbersome to use in the hands. You don't need a huge bag to fit it in. Okay, the fourth thing that I love about the Sony a6300 is that the menu system is very easily navigatable. that's a word, navigatable. The menu system is easy to use. So some other Sony users have voiced concern that the menu system is kind of clunky and it's not very intuitive or anything. They may be right compared to other cameras, but since this is the first camera that I've used, this is the first navigation system that I've ever used. I've learned on this. I've learned kind of the ins and outs of it. I don't see anything that's clunky about it. I mean, I guess in hindsight, Sony may have figured out some things they could have done better to make it more efficient, like going back and through it. But as it is, I really enjoy it. It's pretty intuitive. The things that you're looking for are pretty plainly named. For example, when I was first shooting astrophotography outside and trying to get some deep space objects like the Orion Nebula, one of the first shoots that I did that with, I went right outside of my front door, like right in front of my house. And at the time, my wife and I were living in apartments, or at the time, my wife and I were living in a townhouse, and there were people all around us. And it was like midnight when this first deep space astrophotography shoot was going on. And the problem was that every time I took a picture, this camera would make like a beeping sound, because I had to use the timer because I was shooting at 300 millimeters, and I had this long lens, and every time I pressed the shutter button, I didn't have a remote shutter. I didn't have a remote shutter release at the time, so I had to manually press the shutter button. Every time I did that, the camera shook, so I had to be on a timer. But the problem was, every time I took a shot, there was this beeping sound that was fairly loud. And this went on for 3 or 4 minutes. And after that, I was like, okay, I don't want to wake up the neighbors. So I had to go back and manually search through the menu system and navigate to the to the camera audio feedback. I forget what it's called now, but the point is, it didn't take me very long, because everything is just pretty intuitive, at least in my opinion, for the menu system. Okay, the fifth and final thing that I love about the Sony a6300 is the image quality, especially in low light settings. The dynamic range of this camera is pretty insane, and it is a crop sensor. It's not a full frame sensor. So if dynamic range is the most important issue to you, you may look at Sony's full frame mirrorless line, like the a7R3 or a7, something like that. There is noise visible at higher ISO settings on this camera, but it's really not too bad. A lot of the astrophotography shots that I've taken on the a6300 have been at ISOs between 1600 and up to 4000, maybe some even up to 6400. And the noise is pretty manageable at ISO 4000, and it's very manageable at ISO 1600. And this is like in the middle of the night, total darkness. The daytime photo quality is excellent. We've got a 24.2 megapixel sensor on this camera. I'm not into like the technical specs of cameras. I'm much more of a PC guy. I'm learning the camera systems, but I guess I'll put the technical specs of this camera up on the screen right now, and you guys can just navigate to Sony.com if you're more interested in all that. But we're just talking real world photography experience here. So yeah, even though there is some noticeable noise at higher ISOs, it's very easily taken care of in post processing, or gotten rid of entirely if you want to take more than one shot back to back and just stack them in Photoshop or something like that. It's really not that big of a deal, and even like shooting at higher ISOs in the daytime, it's not going to be a big deal at all. The noise really shows up the most like in dark settings, but from my experience, especially, or at least with astrophotography experience, it's not that big of a deal. I've even printed some astro shots that I've taken with this camera, and the noise is not even visible. All right, well, I know I said this was going to be a video about 5 things I love. I'll give you guys one freebie. And this doesn't necessarily have to do specifically with the camera, more the price of the camera. I think this is on Amazon for like $750, maybe a little bit under that. The price keeps going down on this camera. When I purchased it, it was about $1,000. And that was almost 3 years ago. So the price is steadily declining. And for what you get, I mean, $750 is a great price. You may even be able to get like a bundle with a kit lens or something like that for the same price, so you never know. All right, if you own this camera, what do you think? Leave a comment below. Am I right? Am I wrong? That being said, we're gonna end the video here. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please give it a thumbs up. It helps out the YouTube algorithm tremendously. Subscribe for more. I'll see y'all next time.